Hey, what is going on? It is the Dharma Guy here, and it is Dharma Time. Welcome. It is, what is it? Today's Tuesday. It is a hot Tuesday for me. Our, like 1 week of good weather disappeared now in Florida, so I'm sure a lot of people would love that. There's a lot of people who love the sun and the heat. I do not happen to be one of those people. So I'm back to suffering with the heat, but hey, what are you going to do? Anyways, let's go ahead and take care of the sponsorship and some house cleaning real quick. Thank you for Journey Peer for helping us out with the sponsorship. Retreat Premier Addiction Treatment Centers, both very good quality treatment facilities. Next one, of course, is the Now Matters More Foundation and Orange County. Now Matters More Foundation, we do have an event coming up, and that's going to be March 19th. That is our annual golf tournament. By all means, come check us out if you are local. And if you're not local and you just want to give, by all means, go to nowmattersmore.org, and we would love to put that money to good use. Also, one of our sister shows, I guess. Hey, I like that, sister shows, because they are sisters. The Lemon Squeeze, which, first of all, Lemon Squeeze show, you guys got to check it out. It is a fantastic couple ladies who really know how to put things in a way that seem very entertaining. Anyways, they're going to be at the National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day coming up on February 17th at from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Holden Heights Community Center. Let me put it up there for the camera. Here you go. And it will be on our social media as well. Very good events. Constance B., one of the co-hosts there on the show, is actually going to be a keynote speaker, and she's going to talk about her own personal story when her father was actually diagnosed with AIDS, and how that impacted her, and so on and so forth. So, very good event, very good moment. I'll be there, so will Louie. We'll be there supporting the show and checking it out. So, looking forward to that. And once again, that's coming up on February 17th. Now, let's talk about. Oh, wait a minute. I see. That's why I write things down. I got to remember. So, for some of you who follow me on social media, I posted a comment yesterday thanking AT&T for giving me an opportunity to I guess realize how patient I'd become over the years. So I was trying to do an upgrade, and in doing so, I found somebody, and I believe they were not of this country, so it was very difficult to understand some of their accent. No big deal. The problem was it was a very simple question, and when I say simple, I mean truly simple. When I finally got the right person on the line, he answered it literally in like 4 or 5 seconds. Mind you, over an hour talking to this first person, going on hold, back and forth. But anyways, the reason why I'm mentioning this story is because, Kurt, if you're listening, thank you very much for that. You did a great job. I say that because he promised me he was going to tune in to the show and check things out, and he wanted a shout out. So I am a man of my word. I promised a shout out. So there you have it. Thank you again, Kurt, for helping me out. And getting that taken care of for me. Anyways, I can't go any further without talking about the Super Bowl. So I gotta say, fantastic Super Bowl, man. For those who know me, know that I'm not a huge Patriots fan, but I do have to give them their respect. They showed up to play. They did their job. I don't think anybody lost that particular game. I think the Eagles won it, and I think also for the commercials, I think Tide won it. they did their thing, man. I gotta give them credit, but. I'm very proud of the way the game went down, man. I think that both teams showed up to win, and the Eagles persevered, man. I think they all played well as a team. They all did what they needed to do to get the victory, and you gotta love it, man. That's why we watched the game, right? Having said that, our topic today is personal growth, right? And personal growth is it's kind of a weird subject. I think people have different opinions on it. There's tons of like self-help gurus out there. There's thousands and thousands of books. But what does it mean? Why do we do it? Why is it important? And that's what I'm going to try to get you guys to hear today is to kind of grasp why personal growth is important and maybe give you some ideas on how to start that ball rolling for yourself. And I'd like to start with the Super Bowl in the sense of Nick Foles. Once again, for those of you who don't watch football, which I do, but I can't, there's plenty of people who don't. Nick Foles was the backup quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. He had his moment in the sun. I don't know. I think it was 2014, I believe. So roughly 3-4 years ago. Can you hit that producer there? Just hit the red button for me. I'm getting a phone call. That would be my son laughing, by the way. Anyways, Nick Foles was the starting quarterback for the Eagles back in, I think it was 2014, and he had a pretty good season. He had a moment there where he was doing really, really well, and then it all kind of came crashing down the following season, I believe it was, where he just wasn't doing well. He ended up losing his starting position and became a backup. And even hearing him talk about it during the Super Bowl, in different interviews and whatnot, he had a couple moments where he was questioning if he was in the right space. Like, here I was, I believed in myself. I thought I was doing great. I go into the NFL, which is a great moment for anybody. He gets a starting position, he rides the high wave, and then he ends up losing his starting position, and then he rides the bench. And so for him, it had to have been a hard moment, a hard pill to swallow to confront that reality, right? And I think he even mentioned in one of the interviews that he thought about retirement. He thought about just quitting and going to do something else for a while. And thankfully, he didn't for the Eagles fans, because he's now the Super Bowl MVP. But can you imagine the amount of growth that he had to kind of accomplish, if you will, or go through in order to come out the other end of that Super Bowl MVP? Think about yourself. Think about how many moments in your life that you've encountered, a disappointing moment or something aggravating you, whatever it may be, that you kind of you cut out or you walked away from, or let's just be honest, you failed miserably, right? I can think of numerous things in my life that I really unskillfully handled. And I can't imagine, going through that kind of a high and low and then back up to the high again. And so I think for him, that was an example of perseverance. I think it was an example of personal growth. He had to look inward. He had to find the fortitude, if you will, to stick it out and continue to go in there day after day after day, convincing himself that he's on the right path and it's all going to work out. And not to be that bad teammate, the one that's in there wishing ill upon the guy who's starting in front of him. And it worked, right? I mean, it worked. He came out the other end. He's a Super Bowl MVP. And now we're going to see what happens in his career afterwards. But I'm going to say he probably has the mental fortitude to handle whatever it may be, because he's taken the time to grow. And I think that's where a lot of us kind of need to focus our attention on. And I have it written down here so I don't forget. So growth, why is growth important? Hopefully, I'll address this throughout the entire show. But right off the bat, to me, when I say growth, why I think it's important is because it helps us adapt. I was talking to a producer here prior to the show going on there, and he brought up a good point that I forgot to mention when I was trying to formulate what the show was going to be, and that is, too many times we think of being stagnant as in, not moving forward. And in theory, that's correct. However, the problem is, if you're not moving forward and everything in front of you is continuing to move, you're actually going backwards now. Meaning the distance between you and everything that you were around is that much greater because you chose not to grow. You chose not to move forward. And I say chose because you can choose that. Oftentimes we feel that life is thrust upon us and we don't have a choice, but we do. And it starts with a mentality, and that mentality is, I want to grow. I want to be the best me that I can be. So to give an example, for instance, I think a lot of people can relate to this idea, right? You wake up, you get into your routine, you get up, you get your coffee, maybe if that's what you're into, you brush your teeth, you get dressed, you get in your car, you drive to work, you go to work, you deal with whatever responsibilities are on your shoulder that day. You deal with callers, you deal with bosses, whatever it may be. You get off work, you come home, maybe you have kids, maybe you don't. If you do have kids, you pick them up, you get home, you start getting dinner ready, you start getting kids taken care of, baths, all that sort of stuff. And then when all those things are essentially taken care of, what do? Well, you sit back typically, I would say, for most people. You sit back and you do whatever it is that calms you down. Whether it be, some people watch TV, some people read books, some people have a glass of wine or something. We all have our way of unwinding at the end of the night. The problem, though, is nowhere in that situation that I described there did I leave room for personal growth. Nowhere in there did I leave room for maybe meditation, reading, or any of the things that help us grow internally. And that's the problem, is we get stuck in our little rut. We get stuck in this routine of survival, this routine of responsibilities, and we forget one of the most important responsibilities we have to ourselves and to our families is to grow, is to learn, is to never stop striving for better. We strive for better in our employment, in our relationships, and our and all these other facets of life. And it would be unheard of for most people to think of being stagnant or think of being complacent in a relationship, right? They call that settling, and it's always a bad word for people. Same thing with our jobs, right? When we look at careers, we want upward mobility. We want opportunities to advance, things of that nature. If you own a business, you're always looking for increasing your bottom line, increasing that profit margin, things of that nature. If you're in sports, you're always looking to improve your 40 speed or whatever it is that you're trying to do. But yet we don't have that same kind of tenacity when it comes to just being the best us that we can be. For some reason, that takes a back seat. We just assume that, oh, well, I've made it. I'm good. I pay my bills. I've got a decent life. I'm doing all right. I'm not in jail or anything. I'm not hurting people. I'm good. I made it. And then the problem with that is now you're stuck. You're stuck with what you have. And so if what you have is awesome and fantastic, good for you. The problem with that, though, is even if it's awesome and fantastic, what you might start to realize is mentally it's not awesome and fantastic. That's why there's a lot of rich people who are surrounded by a lot of things end up having depression or end up, committing suicide, things of that nature. We think that they have it all, but they don't. And that's because somewhere along the line, they decided it was okay to not grow anymore. They undervalued what growth can give you, the kind of peace, the kind of fulfillment that growth offers you. And so, my advice, I guess, is to stop that process, right? Is to appreciate and bring to the forefront why growth is important. Don't underestimate or undervalue growth. When it comes to our own lives, growth is what makes you happy. Growth is what gives you that peace. Growth is what allows you to accept the things in life that you don't necessarily like, right? And so that's how we can start to realize we need growth. First of all, ask yourself, what do you do to grow? If that doesn't immediately come to you, then maybe you need to rethink it, right? And if you don't believe me, go ask anybody. Start asking a bunch of your friends, hey, what do you do to grow? And you're going to find out very, very quickly who grows and who doesn't. And what I mean by that is when you ask somebody, what do you do to grow? For the person that truly does grow, that's such an easy question to answer. They'll immediately come up with 2, 3, 4, 5 things that they do that they feel makes them grow. Now, whether it legitimately works or not, that's a debate for another day. But in their mind, though, they think that's what it is. Why? Because they value growth. And so therefore they'll have a list of things. So if I ask you, what do you do every day to grow? And you can't immediately come up with 3 or 4 things, maybe that's a sign that you should put more of an emphasis on growth. Are there instances or circumstances in your life that you can't stand today and you just can't seem to accept, you can't seem to get over, or hurts or injuries that you can't seem to let go of? Maybe that's a sign you need to grow a little bit. Maybe those are the areas of your life that you just haven't learned yet on how to accept, right? Because being angry, being disappointed, being upset, is it working? Is it getting rid of them? Is it making it any easier to deal with? Probably not. So that's an area maybe where you can start to grow. Maybe you can learn how to accept it for what it is, not as you want it to be. And that makes you happy. That gives you your peace. Because as you've heard me, so I'm dry today for some reason. Maybe you heard me speak in previous episodes. Happiness. We oftentimes confuse happiness, man. When I talk to people, what makes you happy? They have this laundry list of stuff, right? Just stuff. Whether it be, my car, my job, my money, even family and friends, just things outside of ourselves. And that we claim that that's happiness. The problem is those are pleasure. And the thing with pleasure is it stops. It's all impermanent, man. It never lasts forever. Your friends, your family. Friends move away. Family moves away sometimes. Family passes away. Things happen. Those things are ripped from you in your life at some point. And if your happiness was dependent upon only that, then what does that mean? Does it mean when those things are gone, because they will, you're just never going to be happy again for the rest of your life? Of course not. You're going to have to find ways of dealing with it. And that's where the growth comes into play. And that's why growth is so important. Because happiness is so much closer to acceptance than it is to pleasure. Acceptance is not agreeing with what's happening around you. It's just accepting that this is what it is at the moment. And there's nothing I can do about it right now. So I'm going to accept it for what it is. And I'll work to change it. But I'm okay regardless. That's acceptance. And so it's a mindset. And the way you get that mindset is through growth. Because at the end of the day, man, we're not born that way. Don't get it twisted. We're not born that way. We might be initially born that way as infants, but very quickly we learn that that's not going to get our needs met, right? So that's where the whole survival comes into play. So very, very quickly we learn that if I want, food or whatever it may be, I need to cry, I need to scream. And that gets us what we want. And so this idea of not accepting the things around us and fighting and all this other stuff, that is fantastic for survival, man. If you're listening to this right now, you are an awesome survivor. Good job. You've made it. Problem is, survival is not happiness, man. The things that make survival so successful and so great oftentimes are contrary to happiness. This incessant need to change things and make it to what we think it should be, it's great for survival. Hey, I'm hungry. I should go out there and find something to fill my belly so I'm not hungry anymore. Fantastic for survival. That is awesome. Because if you're trying to survive and you just sit around and say, I'm hungry and this sucks, but I might as well accept it, you're going to die. You're not going to make it. However, as good as that is for survival, constantly walking around trying to change everybody else around you and change how they're reacting to things or their perspective on things, has that ever worked? Has anybody listening to this ever been in a conversation with somebody or an argument or whatever that in the middle of that heated debate, the other person was like, oh my God, you're so right. Thank you so much for bringing that to me. No, it's never happened and it's never going to happen. So this concept of trying to change people around you is never gonna work. And so that's where the difference between survivalness and happiness comes from.
You mean all those nasty posts when you respond to those posts? That doesn't work, Trinity?
No, not at all. And I will not get into this at the moment. Look at politics, man. You got Democrats and Republicans. You got the pro-Trump and the anti-Trump. And trust me, there's no shortage at the moment of arguments, of posts, of discussions. Just go anywhere and say the word Trump, and it's going to start vitriol everywhere you go. Does it work? No, man. Nobody's changing their mindsets. And so, but anyway, so to go back into the scenario, right? So that scenario I gave where you're taking care of responsibilities, you're surviving, you're trying to make it through the day, you're trying to take care of the kids and take care of the bills and all these other things. And our mindsets oftentimes is with personal growth, either we don't value it or it's, I'll do that later. But the problem is later never comes. And the reason why it doesn't come is because we place more value on getting our bills paid, on raising our kids, and taking care of all these other needs around us. The problem with that is we undervalue how much that growth makes all those things easier, right? When you grow as a person, it makes taking care of bills a little bit easier, right? Because you're more content in life, you're more satisfied, which means your productivity is going to go up because you're not looking at your job or whatever it may be as like, oh, I got to go do this stupid job. No, you're like, hey, you know what? This is what I got to do. I'm going to go make the best of it. But the biggest point I want to make in that is raising your kids. Is there anybody here or anybody listening that has children? Is there anything you wouldn't do for your kids? How about personal growth? Because that's one of the most important ones. My children, having them caused me to grow more than anything in my entire... I learned more from my kids than they could possibly learn from me. I learned more about myself and what I need to do, the areas I need to grow in. And if I wouldn't have made those strides, I would be the worst father out there on the planet at the moment. But because I was willing to grow, because I realized the value of what growing meant to my children, that's why I grow. Because that's one of the most important things I could do for them. The most important legacy that I can give my kids is teaching them to grow. Teaching them to understand areas in which maybe they're wrong. Maybe their way isn't the best way, and that's okay. What's not okay is doing it anyways. What is okay is I'm wrong. Let me learn from it. Let me get better. Let me figure out a different way. That's the greatest legacy I can give them. It's kind of that whole cliche of, give a man a fish, you feed him now, teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Well, if I could teach my children to grow, that's adaptability, man. That means no matter what comes their way, they're not going to be so steadfast in their belief that they'll never move forward and they'll be unhappy forever. Instead, I'm teaching them to acknowledge, hey, something's not working here. What can I do differently about the situation? What can I add to my mindset that will help me get through this situation where it doesn't cause so much trouble in my life? Because growth doesn't mean abandoning your own ways. It means adding to your ways and improving them and making them better. There's a difference. See, people think growth sometimes, they think negativity. They think that I'm not good enough, so therefore I've got to get rid of it and grow. That's not what growth means. Growth means I'm doing pretty good right now, but I could do better. I'm doing pretty good, but there's things in my life that I could improve upon that would make that even better and make me more valuable to those around me. So there's a phrase, and Aaron, if you're listening, I stole it from you. I have to give you credit, but and the phrase is, you can't fill from an empty cup. right? So if I'm going through life and I'm suffering and I'm dealing with all these things around me and I'm struggling to pay bills and I'm upset at my spouse or I'm upset at my coworkers or I'm so upset that Trump won, whatever it may be, whatever it is that's causing me upset that I just can't seem to get over, what kind of a father do you think that's going to make me? How draining do you think that is every day to wake up with that angst and try to deal with that? It's horribly draining. And then when I'm empty, when all my energy and all my love and my compassion and stuff is tainted and it goes out that way, then how am I going to go around and improve the life of people around me? How am I going to give my kids the love and attention and compassion that they need? How am I going to give them the proper tools? I'm not. I'm going to be more likely to be like, guys, just go. Like, go do something. Leave me alone or whatever. Let me deal with this, right? Because, I'm an adult and it's hard being an adult. You're a kid. Go be a kid. No, dude, that's not what they want. They want lessons. They want to be talked to. And I can't do that if my cup is empty. So I've got to fill my cup. And the way I fill that cup is by growing. And so the problem that we have now with the kids is, whether we believe it or not, we are our kids' biggest role models. I'm going to say that again because I know a lot of people don't believe that. We are our kids' biggest role models. I know sometimes, last I checked, none of my kids, I have 4 now, none of them have a poster of me in their bedrooms. Hey, they're not aspiring to be me that they know of, right? So we tend to believe that we don't have our kids' ears because, if your kids are anything like mine, they don't listen to me half the time. Or I think that they don't listen to me. And the reason why I think that they don't listen to me is because they don't immediately do what I want them to do. And I forget sometimes that's not listening. Listening is just hearing me, listening to me, and understanding me. That doesn't necessarily mean their behavior is going to be corrected immediately. They're kids. They have their own mindsets, their own wants, their own needs. So you have to understand that they don't always want the life that you want for them necessarily. And that's where the whole letting go thing comes up. And that's later on in life, right? What I'm talking about is in the here, in the now, they are listening to you way more than you think they are. And more importantly, they're watching you. They're mimicking everything that you're showing them how to live. And so the problem with that is we all have little things about ourselves that we don't like. We all have idiosyncrasies about us that we think, man, I really need to get better at that. That's one of my weak points, or man, I wish I could do more with that, right? The problem is you don't talk about that. So your kid sees you doing these things that you don't personally like about yourself, but they're picking them up because you're not telling them, hey, this is something I need to work on. This is something I'm actively trying to improve. So how are they supposed to differentiate between, hey, this is what I'm modeling for you to do in your own life versus, hey, this is an area I need to grow in and I'm actively trying to do that? How many of you don't apologize to your kids? How many of you answer the question, why with, because I said so? I know, I've done it before, but that's an area of, hey, maybe you should take some time out to really explain to them your thought process. Maybe you should work on apologizing. It's okay to apologize to your kids, guys. Matter of fact, I recommend it. Because you know what? We all screw up. We all do things that are unskillful. But by not doing that, you're teaching your children then to grow up, and that's the way to go about it. You're teaching your kids, like, I don't need to apologize. It's their fault. They should have heard me differently, right? It's not that, hey, maybe I approached that in a way where I was allowing my frustrations from the day and I took it out on you a little bit. No. You're not teaching them that. You're teaching I can do whatever I want and it's okay. This is the way to go. And I don't think anybody outright, if you spoke it that way, would agree with that. But the problem is by not doing growth, by not showing humility, by not actively pursuing ways to improve yourself, that's what you're passing on to your kids. And I don't think anybody wants to do that. And the reason why I know, matter of fact, that kids do listen is the other show I'm a co-host on, The Couch Live, on Fridays from every 12 to 1. Nice. Come on. You got to give me that.
Nice plug.
Thank you. Anyways, so on The Couch Live, right, we had we went over a study about MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And they did this big, huge survey where they spent years and lots of money. And they asked everybody, why don't you drink and drive, basically. And so they wanted to go through and figure out what were the main causes of all these students and and adolescents and kids who don't drink and drive. Why did they choose not to do that? And the number one thing that they found? Because their parents told them not to. Because their parents basically said to them, hey, don't drink and drive. Because they instilled that into them, and even though you thought that they weren't listening, turns out that was the number one reason why they didn't drink and drive. And it was a massive study done by MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
I think both of us were shocked at that, right? I mean, was I the only one shocked at that?
No, I was shocked.
I was.
That's why I remember it.
Yeah, I was
so
truly shocked at that because it went against the lazy part of all of us who want to believe that they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Right? It's like there's a lazy part inside you that feels like your kids are not listening to you.
Yeah.
When in reality, a lot of kids do exactly what you say.
Well, the majority of them do. Not even a lot.
Right, but I mean, a lot of times we'd say, they're watching what you do more than what you say, which that's true as well.
Yeah.
But, I had no idea that you could tell someone not to do it and that they just may not do it.
Well, studies show that it's not even a may.
I learned from that.
It's a study is they're likely not to. Right. And that's the thing is I think we underestimate that, right? We underestimate the impact that we have, the role model status that we have when it comes to our kids. And that's the thing is we're all, I don't know of any parent out there that's not like all about their kids. But the problem is they're not doing the one thing that's going to help your kids out more than anything else, and that is work on yourself. Do personal growth. Stop being stagnant. Stop being stuck in that mode, because what's going to do is it's going to affect your relationship with them eventually and affect your relationship with other things around you. But not only that, you're passing a legacy on to them that they don't need to grow. You're passing a legacy on to them that there's no need to read things or whatever. This whole accept me how I am kind of movement. I understand the accept me how I am movement, and I really believe in that to an extent. I think that we should accept people for who they are. However, that doesn't mean you could be, it doesn't mean you can be an asshole, right? That doesn't give you the right to do that. You need to grow. You can't just be an asshole and say, oh, you can accept me how I am. No, man. Like, you need to grow. And that's the problem. That's where that sense of I don't want to say entitlement, but that sense of I don't need to change comes from, is this whole quote-unquote acceptance thing. Nobody wants to work on themselves anymore. They just want to blame everybody else for misinterpreting or being too this or too that.
Yeah, and how's it really working for you? I mean, it may be working for your friendships,
yeah.
But is it working? Your kids are probably hating you more.
Well, no,
right?
And I'd be willing to say it doesn't work for your friendships as much as you think it does.
Right.
Because that's the one thing we're realizing nowadays, man, is people aren't as tight and close as they thought they were. A lot of those friends are talking behind your back or whatever it may be. But, and the other thing with the kids, right? And think about this, and I've had to deal with this with my own kids anyways, but this nowadays with the internet and technology, not only are the kids learning from us as parents and as role models, not only learning from us to not reach outside themselves and grow, not to be humble, not to apologize, not to look inward to see what we need to do differently with our perspective to change, but they have technology, which is like a built-in proof, right? When was the last time, even you, who's watching this, when was the last time you had a preconceived notion about something or a belief in something that you Googled the opposite to see how wrong you were? When was the last time you did that? When was the last time you talked to somebody that you knew completely disagreed with you to understand? I don't mean talk to them to convince them that you're right and point out all the reasons why they're wrong. I'm talking about when was the last time you purposely went to somebody, like if you're, I'll mention politics slightly. When was the last time you as a Trump supporter who was pro-Trump went and spoke to somebody who is completely anti-Trump? Not to correct them, but to listen, to understand. Like, you know what? Help me understand why you were so pro-Trump or why you were so anti-Trump, right? That's what I'm talking about. We don't spend that time and effort doing that. And so the kids are doing the same thing. And the difference is a lot of us as parents, we at least started out early on. I know I remember where there was no internet. And so I started out where I went and I would talk to my mom. I would talk to people older than me. And I would get not only the knowledge that I'm looking for, but I would also get the wisdom that they brought with it, the experience that they brought with it. Because a lot of the older adults were smart enough to say, hey, this is how it is, and this is why, and this is what I experienced, and this is why we think that way. But nowadays, not only are kids not necessarily going to us because, well, all kids know everything, and that's how they feel, but then you have the internet. So what they do now is when they have a belief or they have a thought, they look on the internet and they Google reasons why they're right. And they can give you this laundry list of reasons why they're right, but nobody in their lives, I shouldn't say nobody, there are parents that do this, but the majority of the parents I see, they don't teach them, hey, you could be wrong. Look up the other side, grow. And I'm telling you to grow because you see how much I grow. You see how many times I've admitted that I was wrong and I've tried to correct it and I've changed my behaviors. How many times I've come to you and I apologize, like, you know what, I'm sorry. I really misread that situation and I thought you were wrong, but you weren't. When was the last time we did that? And so we're not teaching them those skills. We're not teaching them to grow. And then the problem is that right there, kids, is why, what is his name? The big guru, the self-help guru, Tony Robbins. That's why Tony Robbins is so huge. That's why self-help books are so huge. That's why so many people are watching Dr. Phil. You know, all these people are watching these things, not because they're the most amazing people on the planet, but because we all are missing something. We're all wanting something. We're all wanting some sort of way of achieving happiness, and we don't know how to get it. So we're relying on all these other people to say that one magical phrase or mention that one magical book that we're like, oh, okay, that's what it is. So if what we were doing is working, then why are we all trying to find ways to better ourselves? Why are you listening to this program at the moment? You're not listening to this program because I'm some amazing person. You're listening to this program because something's happening in life where you're like, hey, something's missing. Something's not working the way I want it to work. I want to learn more. That's why you're listening. And kudos to you who are listening for taking a step to have growth. And I sincerely hope that I can facilitate that somehow, some way. But but we all need to kind of get better at doing that. And so, a couple tips. So I'm going to start the process now of giving some ways of doing that. Because I think that, I spoke to somebody not too long ago, and I told them about growth. And they asked me, they were like, well, how? And it never occurred to me because I've spent so much of my time trying to grow. And I've spent a lot of my time overcoming things in my life and kind of learning from them. It never occurred to me that people sometimes just don't have the skills, or maybe they just don't know where to start. So allow me to give you some tips. First thing I'll say that helped me a lot is read. Read. And I used to subscribe to the theory that I hated to read. And I'm still not a huge fan of just sitting down. But one thing I've realized, and it sounds like a really simple concept, after I say it, everybody's going to be like, well, yeah, of course. But we don't tell ourselves that when we say the words I don't like to read or I don't have time for it. We don't like to read and we don't have time to read the stuff that we're not interested in. If you told me right now to go read a book on, I don't know, flower growing, I would, oh my God, I would hate that. I probably couldn't make it more than 3 minutes into it before I would come up with a million reasons why I shouldn't do it. I hate this. This is stupid. I'm never going to use it. It's hot in here. My kids need to, whatever. I would come up with a billion excuses and I would feel justified in every single one of them. Not because the information was invalid and not because it wouldn't necessarily help me at some point in my life, but because I'm just not interested. And so when I'm not interested, it seems like the biggest mountain to climb ever, right? So think about even yourself. People who are listening to this, oh my gosh, how many hours have you logged reading status updates on Facebook? That's reading, guys, but you're interested because we all love drama, right? And so we have to start to be interested in self-improvement. Be interested in the why. That's a big one, right? The why. For me, that was one of my most important questions that I ever asked myself is the why. And that's one of the most important things I like to read about is the why. What's going to help me figure out why? I started asking why when I was like a kid. And Mom, I'm sure you're listening to this. You can probably attest. I was always that kid that was why, and she would do her best to answer, and that's why she's very happy for Google, because when that came out, she could just say go Google it. And trust me, for those of you who know me, I spend an absurd amount of time just looking stuff up because I like to know why. It started out when I was a kid, just trying to figure out how things worked and why things happen the way they happen. And so just growing up, I was always fascinated with why we do the things we do, why I like what I like. And and so for me, one of my biggest growth moments happened not too long ago in my life. And I was having resentments, right? Here I am. I do my best. I counsel other people. I give advice. I do the show. I teach spirituality. But I was struggling with a certain area of my life, and I was holding on to resentments. And I couldn't figure out why. Like, I'm so good at letting stuff go and handling things skillfully in certain areas, but this one specific topic, for some reason, I couldn't let it go. And I was like, why? So instead of buying into it and just blaming everything else around me, I instead tried to grow from it. And I tried to say, okay, why? Because letting go of something is normal. Some people do it. A lot of people do it. So why in this situation can I not let go? What is it that's causing me? Why am I so attached to this? And so the thing that I started to realize and where my personal growth came from was learning that powerlessness was a huge thing for me. Because a lot of the stuff I went through as a kid, I felt powerless for. A lot of stuff that I went through as a child took my power away from me. So I grew up thinking, all right, fine. I'm going to respond to that now by growing up to be an adult that is the biggest, meanest, nastiest thing I can be that will make sure that nobody ever takes my power from me again, ever. It sounds like a simple concept, but it's very easy not to understand how that's dictating your every thought, your every action, your every move. So for me, that's what was causing me to hold on to resentments. That's what was causing me to be angry about stuff or frustrated about stuff or feel disrespected by things that maybe the person next to me wouldn't care about, and vice versa. And that was my why. And so for me, it was a very liberating moment. That's where my growth came from. I learned to realize that I don't need that little kid inside of me that feels the need to fight for powerlessness. I don't need him to fight anymore. I've won. I'm an adult. Go play, little kid. I got this. Go relax. Go be a kid. But I wouldn't have been able to do that had it not been for me willing to look inward and ask myself why. Had I just stayed in my groove and said, hey, it's too hard, or I don't need to know it, or just blamed everybody around me, or did all these other things that are very easy to do, it's human nature to do that, what kind of a parent would that make me? What kind of a human would that make me? How much peace would that give me when I think everybody around me is trying to take my power from me? That doesn't give me any peace at all, man. I wake up every day like, all right, who's taking it now? And so that's why the growth is important. That's why asking why is a very, very good question to ask. Next one I have written here, and I've got a little list.
Can I ask you about the reading one
Sure.
real quick? Like, does listening to the audio tapes, since that's so popular now, that counts, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's not necessarily that you're reading, but the fact that you're listening to other people's viewpoint, opinions, and the way they phrase it, right?
Acquiring knowledge.
Okay, I like
Acquiring knowledge.
Okay.
And I'm glad you brought that up. I don't personally do audiobooks.
Right.
Because I'm more of a visual kind of guy. But for those of you who are not, audio is fine. You know, the main concept when it comes to reading is just what he said, is find viewpoints that are different than yours, that have a different perspective, which is basically everybody, and listen, learn, read to understand. Don't listen just to say you listened. Don't read just to get to the end of it and say you read it. Read it to understand. And if that means the book takes you a year to finish, so be it. You're not reading it just so you can tell your friends, oh, that book, oh yeah, I read it. Congratulations. No, nobody cares if you read a book, dude. None of your friends or family care if you read a book. What they care about is if you read that book and you grew from it and you became a better person and became more fun to be around and you offered more value to those around you because you're much more at peace than you were before you read the book. That's what they care about. And you're only going to get that if you take the time to look into it and read to understand. The next one I have written down here is watching TV, right? I'm not going to say we all do it because there's some weird people out there who don't do it. They exist. But oftentimes I find myself watching TV, and I do love, and I think Louie and I have this in common. I like reality shows because, a lot of it's scripted. You can't script the raw emotions that people are having, the dynamics that are taking place. So what I like to do is when I'm watching TV, I like to look and see how that relates to my own life. If I see in somebody on TV, even if it's not a reality show, if it's just a regular TV show, the drama and stuff, do you relate to that character? Do you like what that character's doing? Do you, when somebody's obviously the villain and somebody's obviously doing something that you don't approve of, why? Why don't you approve of that? Why does that mean something to you? And do you ever do that in your own life? Better yet, could anybody around you say that you do that in your own life? Because even though you might not see it, some people around you might see it. And so my point is we spend an inordinate amount of time watching TV for some people. It's like their go-to for relaxation at the end of the night. So instead of just looking at it and zoning out, which is totally fine, but try every now and then to use it as a teachable moment for yourself, to read something or watch something and be like, man, I can relate to that. Interesting. I wonder why I do that. And if nothing else, it plants a seed. It gives you something to research later on. The next one is I have here is look inward. Look inward and be honest. I'm going to put those together. I have them separated here, but I'm going to put them together because they go hand in hand. And what I mean is looking inward means, looking inside yourself for the answer. And I know that sounds like very guru-ish, but it's true. We all have the answers inside of us already. You have it. You know what it is. I have a rule at my house that I try to implement as often as possible. More so for my older kids because the younger ones, I get it. But for my older ones, for the 13 and the 17-year-old, I have this rule where I don't want to hear I don't know. I don't want to hear it. If I ask you something, I don't know. I always tell them, I joke with them, they make up something. I don't care. I want to hear something. I don't want to hear I don't know, because that's a very lazy thing. Because the way the human brain works, I can say potato. Everybody listening just thought of something. Maybe a potato, maybe a potato chip, maybe, I don't know, a dog. I don't know, but you thought of something. And that's the point, is your brain is going to instantly put something in your head. And oftentimes, when you're trying to figure out what a solution to a problem is, or why you feel a certain way, the very first thing that popped up that you're embarrassed to admit, or you're afraid to say, or you're uncomfortable, or there's voices in your head telling you that's not it, it's it. That's what it is a lot of the times. Not all the time, but a lot of times, that's what it is. And so we have to look inward and realize that the things outside of us are not in control of our happiness. They're not in control of my feelings. I am. So I have to look inward for the solution. And the be honest part is huge, right? We are amazing liars to ourselves. We really are. I can lie to myself better than anybody in the world. And because we come up with all sorts of justifications and reasons why, even though we all know they're BS. So, and what I mean by is be honest with yourself is what were you truly feeling and why? And I'll give you a brief example. You know, my 13-year-old, and I'm going to do my best to be as vague as I can because I don't want to embarrass her, but my 13-year-old now has we'll call it a boyfriend in her mind. So anyway, I saw her coming. As a matter of fact, I think I was on the phone with Louie. I was on the phone with somebody, and I saw her walking up. I was there to pick her up yesterday, and I could just tell by the way she was walking, something happened. I could tell her mindset just wasn't in a good place at that moment. So she gets in the truck, and I usually do my normal every day. I ask them, how was your day? What did you learn? Things of that nature. But I could tell today was different. So I immediately looked at her. I was like, all right, what's up? What happened? She's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, what happened? You're obviously upset. Was it boyfriend? What did he do? And she looked at me. She couldn't believe I knew. So we started talking. And what ended up happening is kids talk, whatever. There was gossip happening, and she was disappointed in the way that he handled something. And so she ended up kind of ignoring him and kind of being mean when she was leaving, and she got in the truck. And her answer to that was, well, he made me mad. And so I immediately stopped it. I was like, all right, hold up. He made you mad? Or was it he didn't behave in the way you expected him to behave, and you're frustrated with that? Because at the end of the day, he can't make you mad. What made you mad was you thought he was going to zig, and he ended up zagging. And so now you're mad at him for doing what he does. She expected a table to be a chair instead of just accepting that table's a table, right? So the problem, though, is she was upset with the way he was acting in a certain way. And when I asked her why she was upset with it, she came up with all these superficial reasons of why. Reasons that most of us have probably said, or if we heard, we'd be like, oh, yeah, that sounds right. The problem is it wasn't being honest. Those were symptoms, right? Much in the same way of a cough isn't the sickness. A cough is a symptom of the sickness. And so her anger and her frustration wasn't the problem. It was a symptom of the problem. The problem was, it's her first, and this is where the vulnerabilities come in, which is another one on my list, is be vulnerable. And that is, she was afraid to be vulnerable. One of her vulnerabilities at the moment is she's 13. Who can't relate to that at some point? And lots of emotions and things are going on. It's her first boyfriend, really. And so she probably likes the attention. She likes the idea of having that title. And she's afraid it was going to be taken from her because of whatever reason. The fear of losing what you have. And I'm not saying that there was a threat like that happening, but in her mind, that's what she heard is, oh, no, I could lose this. And then that got her upset and feeling of anxiety, and then that came out as anger. That's what I mean by being honest. Why are you mad right now? Are you mad? Is it the other person's fault? Are they just misbehaving? You're mad? Or are you mad because they didn't behave in the way you thought they should behave? Or are you mad or frustrated because maybe something they did touched a vulnerability inside of you and you're not quite okay with that yet? And so that's what I mean by looking inward and being honest. It doesn't help if we look inward, but we're not honest. It does absolutely nothing. So we got to look inward because the solutions are within us, but we got to be honest with ourselves. And I don't really care if you're honest with everybody else around you, right? I mean, obviously it helps if you have a support system around you that you can talk to and that you can feel safe. You got to find that safe person. And for those of you listening, what I mean by safe person is the person that doesn't judge, doesn't try to solve. A safe person is someone who listens, basically. And I don't mean listen to respond. I mean, just listen. I'm going to listen to hear your perspective and hear you out. That's a safe person. And so, if you have those people, then by all means. But if you don't have those people, or you don't feel that you have those people, it shouldn't stop you from being honest with yourself and really, truly listening to those vulnerabilities. And that V word, vulnerable, that's a dirty word for a lot of people. We oftentimes hear vulnerable and we think, oh, I can't be vulnerable because, I don't I don't want anybody to hurt me or all these other things. And what we need to realize is being vulnerable is the true strength. Being vulnerable is, I'm going to put this out there and I very well could get hurt from it, and that's okay. How is that not strong, right? We view oftentimes vulnerable as a weakness, but yet, to me, that's a sign of true strength. That's a sign of, I'm going to put myself out there and be vulnerable, knowing I very well could get hurt, but also understanding and believing that I'm going to be okay. Even though I could get hurt, I'm going to be okay. I'll come out the end. That is strength. That's not weakness. That is true strength, and understand that you can survive being hurt from your vulnerabilities. And understanding vulnerabilities just means you're human. Nothing wrong with that. We all have them. The next one I have here is be teachable. And to be honest with you, I probably should have put that one first because it's one of the most important ones. Be teachable. And I say that because I know one of my biggest moments in life. I have 3 major moments, and the second moment was because I was teachable. The moment itself might not have been that big of a deal, but the reason why it was a big deal to me is because in that moment, I became teachable. For whatever reason, the things around me all came together in this perfect storm, with the finality of it being, I became teachable. And so I didn't learn anything in that moment that improved my life, but I became teachable in that moment that allowed me to learn from the things I needed to learn from. And that's what I mean by be teachable. Teachability just means I'm willing to admit, or I'm willing to operate under the assumption that I could be wrong at the moment. And as I said last week, man, every time I think I know something, life kicks me in the nuts, man, and reminds me I don't know anything, right? And so that's what I mean by being teachable, is realizing, hey, I could be wrong. Last week I think it was, I talked about the Me Too movement. So for those of you who have a very opinionated concept or whatever of what that means, maybe you're wrong. I'm not saying you are, but maybe you are. What would happen if you approached it from that perspective? For those of you who are very, very polarized in the political spectrum, what would happen if you approached that situation with, hey, maybe I'm wrong. Let me look from the other side and see, why they're right. Doesn't mean you're going to agree with it at the end, but that's teachable. That gives you the opportunity to learn something and grow from it. I'm not saying, once again, that you have to abandon all your ideals, but add to your ideals. And that's where the teachability comes from. Another huge one is meditation, guys. Meditation is huge. And right now, I guarantee you there's at least a few of you who heard that and your butt's puckered up immediately, right? And you're like, oh, I can't meditate. I've already done that. I'm not good at that. Wrong, right? So, first of all, there's thousands of different types of meditation. So unless you've tried every single one of those, you are not qualified to tell me that they don't work for you, right? Number 2, stop thinking of meditation as a skill to be good at or bad at. It's like breathing. You don't walk around telling people you're a good breather. You either breathe or you don't. Meditation, you're not good or bad. You just do or you don't do. And let me also tell you, and I'm famous for saying this in my groups, this idea of being a good meditator, nobody cares. I'm going to be the first to tell you, nobody cares if you're a good meditator or you're not. Nobody cares. You're not going to put that on a resume. You're not going to get a bunch of new friends because you're a good meditator. What good meditation does is it gives you practice for the real world. That ability to control the mind and understand things helps you, a game time, basically. It helps you whenever real world situations happen. Instead of reacting, it enables you to respond. And the difference between a reaction and responding, reaction is immediate. You don't think, it's just emotionally based. The response is thought out, is more humble, is more of a response to what took place, right? So meditation is huge. And I'm not going to go into all the different types. I encourage you to look that up. I guarantee you, no matter where you're at listening to this, somewhere in your area, there's somebody teaching meditation. You can Google it. There's apps. There's tons of different ways. But take some time out of your day, even if it's only 2 or 3 minutes at a clip. There's tons of research that shows it's effective.
See, I think you're going to have to do it one of these days, because to be honest with you, that's a real corny thing when you look it up sometimes. I mean,
it can be.
When you Google it, there's some real
sure
far out ways, like you said, nobody cares how good of a meditator you are.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's people out there that think that a lot of people care how great they are at it.
Sure.
So I think that one of these days you're going to have to take a little segment out and just show us some basic tools to meditate.
I'll have to look into that because there'll be a lot of dead air.
Well, I mean, just or have someone be doing it while you're talking.
Sure.
Maybe bring in a person as a prop or something. I just think because you're right, it's real important. But
I agree.
We know that people aren't going to look it up. People don't like to Google what they're not inspired to do.
And that's what we're talking about today.
So inspire someone to get into that internet and do it.
Exactly. That's the point. But he just touched on it. I mean, you literally were just talking about what I'm saying is we don't value growth as much as we should. We put all these other things around it. And so, yes, I guarantee you a lot of people are saying that right now. And
right.
To be honest with you, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the ones that are hearing me. So that's my point. Is we look at growth as an accessory as opposed to as a necessity, and that's the problem. That's why we're going backwards. That's why all this division's happening, man. It's not Trump's fault. We've been divided for years, man. We've been divided since the beginning of time. Shoot, even if you believe in the biblical times, I'm sorry, was there not a lot of division? Was there not a lot of war times in that? No matter what religion you might believe in, they all have those basic things. If you look at science, the very first fossil that they found had an arrow in his back. We've been fighting and divided since the beginning of time, guys. So, that's not new. But what we can do is grow, and we put the proper value on that. Growing is not a dirty word, man. Growing. Think about all the people in your life that you admire, the people that you look up to and you respect. I guarantee if you do some research, they've done a lot of growth. I've never once heard anybody say, God, Joe. Man, Joe, he's never grown. He's the same person. He's so stubborn, and I really admire him. Not once have I ever heard anybody say that. The people who get admired are usually the ones who've done a lot of growth, have a lot of wisdom, and a lot of value that they impart. And let me tell you, they didn't get that growth and wisdom and value by not growing.
I think we all have that high school friend who's still back doing the exact same thing, don't we?
Of course, man. And we're running out of time, so the last one I'm going to leave you with is, and of course I'm a bias on this one because of all the people I hang out with and what I do, counseling, man. Counseling's not a dirty word either. It's okay to go talk to somebody. This idea that all a therapist is just somebody who listens to you, maybe it's true. What's wrong with that? Don't we do it anyways? Don't we all have that friend that we call up or that Facebook status that we have to put out there in the vague book? Don't we all have that? When you call your friends to complain and moan about your stuff and get their perspective, isn't that therapy? The difference is you're trusting that person who hasn't dealt with their own issues a lot of the time and who hasn't grown themselves to give you advice on how to grow. Why not go to somebody who has spent their life and dedicated their life to help other people grow, who's learned different techniques and different methods that might be effective for you? Why not? But it's not a dirty word. So there's nothing wrong to going to find therapy. There's nothing wrong with finding somebody to talk to about things that might give you some insight that you otherwise wouldn't have had. And I'm not saying that everybody should go do that immediately. I get it. Insurance, money, I get all that. But if you are in a position to do that, why not? Why not? What's it going to hurt? Oh, no, some stranger gave me some good advice. That's horrible. Go. It's not a problem. So there's nothing wrong with therapy, nothing wrong with meditation, nothing wrong with reading. Get outside yourself and try to learn. That's basically the moral of the story, right? And we are running out of time, so I do have to wrap this up.
Yeah, and you got to tell us where you're going to be. You're going to actually be somewhere Friday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Look at that. See, that's why he's a producer, guys. Look at Johnny on the spot. We are going to be at, what is the name of the place again? Help me out here.
Elon Recovery.
Elon Recovery in West Palm, correct?
Correct.
Yes, so the Couch Live will be on tour. So we're going to be there broadcasting live, introducing you to that program, and giving it our perspective of the program's value. So be sure to tune in Friday. We're going live on that one, right? Or no?
We may or may not go live, but here's the thing: that how brave of them to invite us out there to evaluate.
I hope they know what they got themselves into.
Exactly.
It's going to be fun. So for those of you who have seen us on the Couch Live, you understand what I'm talking about. And for those of you who haven't, why not? Get outside yourself. Tune in. Listen. Anyways, so when we know nothing wrong with growth. Stop being stagnated. Stop thinking that that's okay. Stop blaming other people for all your problems. Look inward and find solutions. They are out there. You probably already know them. So on that note, everybody, when you know better, be better.
plans it all out. Just makes it up as he goes along.